Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the regular City Commission meeting of March 27th. Call the meeting to order and invite you all to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item of business is approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we approve this evening's agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Any comments, questions, changes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the minutes, both of the special meeting of February 13th and the regular meeting of February 13th, 2018.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we approve the minutes of both of those meetings.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions, changes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Communications.
We just have one memo from an organization, Hatzala, that will be working within Huntington Woods to respond to medical issues at the request of residents if they want them to respond. And so we've given them permission to work in the city.
Okay. Communications are filed. Our county commissioner is not going to be with us this evening, and we don't have any other elected officials in the room, so we'll move on to public participation. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on an item that's not on the agenda. If you have something, please come forward, introduce yourself, and
Hello, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Thank you very much for having us. I'm Bob Standring. It's my wife, Jacqueline Standring. We currently reside at 12927 Talbot Lane. Our issue, we moved in on September 2nd of this year, and then had a baby on November 7th. And September 7th, and so like 5 days later.
Yeah.
Bad start, man. Bad start.
I know.
Back up and rewind.
A few days later.
Back up and rewind.
So anyways, we ended up moving and everything was great. We previously had a house on Hart, 10036 Hart Avenue, and so we've been in the neighborhood since 2015. What happened is our first water bill upon moving in here was roughly 10 times the amount as it normally was. It was roughly $3,200. It was 25,000 units of water that was that we were billed for, and our normal usage per heart and the previous usage in this house was roughly our usage was anywhere from 2,000 to 2,500 units. And that's pretty similar to the previous usage in the house. So this was 10 times the amount. So from that, once we found that out, we called the city right away. They came over, and we called a plumber and a master plumber. They came over, and my wife she was there when that happened.
Yeah, so just won't take too much of your time, obviously. So we called the city right away when we got the bill, of course, after we picked our jaws up off the floor. And we called the city. We had Marty came out and Dan came out from the city, checked the meter, see if it was still spinning. It wasn't spinning. There was no real suggestions at that time. Everyone was trying to work together to collaborate and see what had gone wrong, obviously, because we were shocked. I ended up calling a plumber from Nelson's Plumbing, Nelson Brothers Plumbing in Royal Oak. They came out the very next day. They assessed everything, had no answers for us. There was speculation that it could have been from the backup drain on our sump pump. They thoroughly checked that out, checked all of our toilets. There were no issues with our sump. The sump is actually in a very protected area in our basement because we have small children, so of course there's nothing near that area in our basement. So still not super satisfied because there was no answer to our question. I had Nelson come out and send a master plumber the next day, just as another set of eyes, because we wanted to make sure that the issue didn't continue happening, or that we could get some answers for the city and for ourselves moving forward. So the next day, Ben was the master plumber. He came out. At the same time, I called the city back. They sent 2 more workers out. They sent Kevin and Marty back out the next day, so they could be there at the same time as Ben, so that we could all have the same eyes on the situation at the same time. Ben ran through everything. He checked all the toilets, checked everything. I have a letter from Ben about what he found, which is essentially nothing. He checked the meters to make sure they weren't running. He was checking the toilets. He put all the dye in all the toilets. Again, it's the gentleman the day before had done all the exact same things. No audible water running at any point, either with the city workers the first time or with both times with the plumbing folks. So no water at any point. We don't have a sprinkler system. We don't have big giant pool or 10 big giant pools. We don't have anything to speak of. One extra load of laundry for a newborn. Aside from that, nothing extraordinary in the home. Nothing changed basically from our Hart home to our Talbot home. And this is our first bill in Talbot, so like Bob had mentioned from the previous owners, still a reasonable amount of water, a bit more than we would use, but nothing wild like this. You know, maybe 5 or 10 different per month. Anyhow, so I have this from this note from Ben, who's their master plumber, basically saying that we the only thing that he could think of was maybe our water softener system, which again we called that company too, and there was nothing to speak of that would account for that type of water usage from our water softener. So anyhow, so we did try to go through the city and several levels and through these reputable plumbing companies throughout the process, and kept the city in the loop the entire time. We spoke to several members of the city, Public Works and whatnot. So this is where we're at.
So what we're asking the city council, you know, the average price per water for the 2,500 units is roughly $310. And when I would ask the city, I would be willing to pay double that. I don't know where this water went. I talked to Rocco in the city, and they said it could be from a sump pump. There's no evidence of that. You know, this could have been from anything. This could have been a meter issue. This could have been so many things. But this is our first bill and our first, you know, while moving to this house. So we're asking. I'd be happy to pay double, and I'd be asking for the city to potentially either forgive or you know, talk about some type of process we can do for that other roughly $2,500.
Or just something. We don't have any answers.
Yeah.
We definitely want to work together on this. We don't have any answers, and it's very hard to absorb the cost for something we have no idea where this came from. This is a big chunk of money for our family and our young family, so this is a big deal to us.
Okay, and the city did check the meter
Correct.
when they were out?
They checked it when they were out,
Correct.
and Marty and Dan and Kevin all gave the option of bringing the meter into the city to take out, and they basically advised against it. They said that it probably wasn't going to be in our best interest to do that, and that they didn't think that was the issue, because I said that I would be willing to do that, and they kind of, with their advice, said don't bother doing that, because our testing isn't very advanced, so to speak. So it just would be a kind of a rudimentary test. If you actually took the meter from the home and then brought it here, there would be no way of knowing like when the water stopped running or when the water started running, so we couldn't even get some sort of like time period as to when this happened, or if anything happens. They advised against that from us.
From my understanding, it wouldn't, there's no way to tell that, but they can check the
Yeah.
calibration on the meter.
Correct.
Would be the
Okay.
reason for pulling
Right.
it
And
and
that,
checking it.
right, and that would determine whether it's working properly.
Right, and so that was given. They said that was an option. They, like I said, they advised against it. They basically said that they didn't have any great answers for it. And if I'm being completely frank with you, they basically said that getting a new meter would maybe make your water bill even more up until this point. So you're better off just not even getting a new. If I'm being completely frank, they told us not to do that. So I probably
So we didn't do that.
didn't do that. Yes, they basically said we don't know what this is for, but this meter is, you're gonna get charged even more going forward if you get a new meter. So we're like, we can't, we're struggling with this bill, so I would be keep paying more to get a new one. So that's gonna run faster or whatever the issue is, so.
Not faster, but more accurate. As meters age, they slow down.
Yes,
Yeah.
so, like I said, if I'm being completely frank with you, that was what was said to me, so I have
Yep.
nothing to hide. That was what was said to me, so.
Mhm.
Did you want to?
Can I speak?
And I'm happy to get, and by the way, I am happy to get a new meter. I'm not opposed to getting a new
Yeah,
meter in any way. I
at
would
all.
be happy for them to reinstall a new meter. I'm not opposed to that in any way. They basically said there's a charge to do the meter and all these other things, and they advised me against it. I'm more than happy to get a new meter. That's from 2018. We're completely happy with that.
I mean, the difficulty is that under the city's charter, and actually under the law, the city cannot provide free water to anyone. Absent some evidence that the meter itself is not working properly, that water was delivered to your home. We don't know where it went, we don't know why, okay? There's some suggestion it may be related to your sump pump, okay? But the fact is it was delivered there. If the meter's working, you receive that amount of money. We can't waive that amount of money, okay? We can't waive it under the law. And you understand, we can't waive it anyway, because if you don't pay it, the citizens of Huntington Woods will pay it, all right? Somebody has to pay it, it's not paid by the city. So, I don't see where the city commission can do anything for you. Absent you pulling the meter and justifying that the meter is not calibrated properly and is not working properly, that's the only basis that we could look at adjusting that bill. But it sounds like to me that they checked it and it's working correctly, so.
They did, and they checked the sump pump and it was working correctly. And I
Yeah.
know that can run, but it was 189,000 gallons of water that went through.
Yeah.
I mean, we would have heard it. I mean, like I'm telling you, like we're in that room all the time.
Yeah, the sump pump in and of itself is a problem, you know, because right now it's discharging into the sewer system, which is illegal, okay?
What's that?
And so you're gonna have to address that issue too.
What do you mean? We had the house inspected, you know, back in August. We were not
Well, I
aware
would
of that.
suggest that you get maybe with, our building department, would that be the right department that they should check with?
This is the first
tomorrow?
time I've heard of it.
Yeah. I mean, am I correct on that, Rocco?
Pardon?
With the sump pump, it's just charging into the sewer?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just that goes unnoticed. If it discharged
Yeah.
outside, you'd have evidence in your driveway.
right.
And what the city attorney's referring to is it's not legal to discharge.
Charge into the water into the sewer
into the
system.
sewer system.
If it were discharging properly, it would be discharging outside, so you would see if it was actually the sump pump, because you'd start seeing water accumulating on your property. Right now, it's running through our sewer system,
Or it did.
or it did, it ran through the sewer system, so that's the problem there.
Okay.
That's just sort of legally where the city stands. I'll turn it back over to the commission.
Mr. Mayor, I was just going to say one thing I would just recommend. When I had my sump put in post the 2014 flood, I had a choice between a water backup and a battery backup, and I went with a battery backup because the water backup sumps use an insane amount of water to operate. I mean, the amount of water that it takes to push water out was substantial. And so I just went the battery backup route. You may want to consider switching that out if that is in fact the culprit, because based on the models that I looked at and the amount of water that they push through, this could have been part of the problem. So, I mean, the one way to know that for sure is to remove that from the equation and just go with a battery backup model, and then you don't have to worry about if it runs, it just draws the battery down. It won't pull from the water system as a backup.
Yeah, that's what we definitely had them, of course, check those issues.
Yeah,
but we
that-
don't-
that's a
of
good
course,
point.
We don't know, but
Yeah.
that was the first thing we had them
Okay.
check.
And it still is an option to have the water meter taken out and check the calibration on it, but short of a finding of a problem with that water meter, the city commission, as our city attorney just explained, really has no method of forgiving of water.
Mr. Mayor, I have one other question, Mr. Mayor. Was any of this bill was any of this time period from the previous owners? You mentioned this was
Two-
the first bill you received. Is it
2
po-
days.
So
2 days.
was it possible that any of this, like something was left on or something could have happened?
That's
from, like, the
possible. They
previous-
did the reading on August 21st. We closed on the 23rd. So there were 2 days from the previous owners into us in terms of the reading, and
We don't know.
Yeah.
like I said, I mean, there is no. I don't know where this water went, where it came from. We didn't use it, so.
Okay.
But if you're saying to pay it, we'll pay it.
It isn't that. You're asking, this happens maybe, I wouldn't say once a year, but I'd say it's probably happened 2 or 3 times when people say, well, you know, I didn't, and it's understandable, and it's like, where'd this come from? It happened to us a few years ago. I know where it came from. My wife waters the lawn too much. I learned that lesson. But you know, it's not a matter of, you know, we don't care, or gee, you know, they're nice people, we'd like to help them. We don't have any legal authority to do that.
Okay.
Under the law. We just don't have the legal power to do that. Sometimes people say, well, you guys can do whatever you want. No, we can't, not lawfully, not legally. So I don't want you to walk out of here thinking we're like recalcitrant or not headed or something like that, which some of us are, and speaking me personally. But I just want you to know that it's a matter of, do you have the legal authority to do that? Do you have the power to do that as a legislative body? And the answer is flat out no. And I would, me personally, I would, if that was my bill, I would get the meter checked. You've got nothing to lose by doing it. The worst thing that happens is it comes back as one of those big mysteries, is what in the world could have happened here because the meter, etc. But I will tell you that some years ago when Alex Alley was still here and he was city manager, he said that there had been a number of these over the years, and there had been instances where people had the meter checked and everything. He said there was never once an instance where the meter was found not to be correct.
Which is probably why they were again saying this is a waste
Well,
of time.
they might,
Like,
but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it for the amount of
Yeah.
money involved here.
Yeah.
You have nothing to lose. But like I said, I don't want you to feel we're not, you know, empathetic to the situation, or that we don't care or anything. We do, but the
No.
problem is we just don't have any legal authority. You know, it's like if the cop has me pulled over on 11 Mile here, and I wave you over. I say, "Will you tell him let me go? I didn't do anything wrong." You're gonna say, "Who am I?" You know, and that's basically what it is. So.
Well, we appreciate
Yeah,
that.
and it was advised to us to bring it to your attention.
That's fine.
So we were just going through all the chains that we could. We didn't expect anything either way.
No.
We just figured we would at least
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Appreciate
bring
that.
it to your attention, yeah, and
Mr. Mayor.
let you guys know what was
All
going
right.
on.
Thank you.
Is there any chance that we can work with them on a schedule for payment? I mean, that's a pretty substantial amount of money.
We've talked about that.
Okay.
Yeah, they said that we can do a scheduled payment, but we'll still have the 5% or 15% late fee assessed on that. So
On what is left over, the balance, not on the.
And there's
entire
nothing
bill.
we can do about that. The only reason, I mean, I'm just asking, I mean, I know the bill just seems extremely high. So I know that you're gonna check the meter, but I just,
Yeah.
the biggest bill I had was $1,400, and it was during a period of time where my neighbor was using my water for construction, which we allowed them to do, but it just seems so unusual. So anything we could do at all to help them, I think would be,
Appreciated.
yeah.
Okay.
great. Thank you very much.
Can I just add that Marty and Kevin have been going by there weekly, just to catch something on
yes.
the read, just in case. So he's been going by and taking a random read, not a scheduled read, just to, maybe something comes up, but it's been normal.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate, Marty's been
Yeah.
great, and you guys have been
Yeah,
great, and
thank
I've
you.
talked to Rocco multiple times, and our last, just to let you know, the last 3 months have been 2,500 units, so, like, it's
Completely normal, yeah.
totally normalized. We haven't changed our lifestyle.
Yeah, those units are dropped to 2 zeros, or 25 units.
Oh, it's fine.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's on show like your bill, yeah. Just listen, okay.
Thank you, guys.
Any other public participation?
Hi, I'm Linda Solomon, 8246 Huntington. I'm following up from the Planning Commission meeting of February 26th, and then there was a subsequent meeting where I'm under the impression that there's some sort of committee that's maybe being put together. I just wanted to follow up about zoning issues with the zoo.
From my understanding, what the planning commission did was asked administration to work with our city attorney to clarify what zoning regulations we can have and can't have as it applies to the zoo. Get a comprehensive report back to the planning commission, and subsequent from that, they will set up a member committee with Amy, the city manager, and a couple members of the planning commission to meet with residents and have a dialogue. as to some of these ideas that people have, what we can do and what we can't do, and then from there, the planning commission will come back with recommendations, whether we change anything or don't change anything, or,
You know, I
so that's the
really,
process we're in right now.
okay, so it's being reviewed.
Yes.
Because I think that it's important that we have maybe elected officials that have some input in this. I feel like, the planning commission, we were pretty much shut out of the meeting when the zoo presented their plan.
It wasn't an open meeting?
It was an open meeting. We were limited to 2 minutes each, only one, you could only speak once. My question, he didn't understand the question from the zoo, and so by the time I got to his answering part, one of the members said, I have 7 seconds left. So, our group had a lot of very good suggestions that were very inexpensive fixes, and we didn't really even get to present them or have any kind of dialogue because they seem to be on a path to passing the plan. And we had gone for the week prior to the planning commission meeting. The plans were on display at Huntington Woods. We had, I'm sure that if you were to ask, I'd have to say there was over 20 people that came and looked at the plans. One night we spent 2 hours with Hank going over the plans, and then the Monday of the meeting, the plans were not even the same. So what we had studied for the week was not even the plan that was presented from the zoo. It had changed. And I just, that didn't seem fair that we couldn't see the plan. We couldn't look at the plan prior to the plan that was voted on was not available to residents, which I thought that was the whole point of going to see the plan. So, I just feel like there has to be a little bit more oversight than having the planning commission be in charge of themselves. They just. Did you receive the letter from Beth Silver that may have been part of your packet? Everyone saw that, because that is very accurate. 3 of the people on the planning commission had no questions or anything. It just seemed like we really didn't have any opportunity for serious input or dialogue on this plan. And now we have, I don't know, maybe, I don't even know, because the plans that we saw are not what was voted on, but there's a very long, solid brick enhanced cinder block wall along Huntington Road that we're going to live with. It could have been where the commission said, can this be enhanced with a mural or some kind of decoration, so that it doesn't look like the alley of a shopping center, a strip mall. But we didn't have any opportunity. And, there's, I don't know, I just feel like leaving this in the hands of the planning commission, we're not going to get anywhere. We're going to end up with a continuation of this cinder block wall all along Huntington Road.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I would just add one comment, that you were going back and forth there between the site plan review of the tiger exhibit and the zoning ordinance. So what I was referring to was what the process we're going through for the zoning ordinance, and the planning commission in the end will have a public hearing on it and make a recommendation to the city commission for final approval. So the elected officials,
For the ordinance.
If there are amendments to the
if there's
ordinance.
changes, the
the
elected
zoning.
officials are the ones that will actually vote on that.
Right, but if they say that there's no changes, which is how we started the meeting, the special meeting, if there's no changes, then nothing comes before you.
If they don't recommend any changes.
Right.
Correct.
That is correct, yes.
Right, so I thought that maybe it might be more helpful I mean, there was people on the planning commission that outright have said that it is not that they should not be charged with overseeing site plans of the zoo. It is not part of their of what they should be doing. So already it's stacked against us.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna make one more comment, and I probably shouldn't do this at this point, but what the planning commission was asked to do from the city commission was to review these ordinances, and at that meeting, they did come up with several points that they wanted investigated, that they were interested in changing. So let's see where the planning commission goes with this.
So
The city commission did ask the planning commission to do this. If they come back with no changes, it's back in our court. If we disagree with that, that doesn't mean it's the end of it.
So where do they discuss this? Is that like,
At planning commission meetings, there'll be open meetings.
so, and it will be on the agenda, because I didn't see that it was on yesterday's agenda.
It was-
Yesterday's agenda was strictly residential site plan reviews. We made two meetings, one just for site plan reviews and one to discuss the zoning ordinance.
So possibly at the next planning commission meeting, this might be on the agenda.
It will probably depend on how many residential site plan reviews are ready for the April agenda, and if it looks like it's gonna be too much, then they would have two meetings, so that we don't have residents sit through a discussion about, the zoning ordinance, and we, put a meeting just aside just for the zoning ordinance. But that hasn't been determined yet, it's too far off right now.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, other public participation is closed, and we'll move on to the proclamations. The first proclamation is recognizing April 28, 2017, and April 27, 2018 as Arbor Day, and April 22nd, 2018 as Earth Day in the city of Huntington Woods. And I'm going to skip through this a little bit. Whereas the city of Huntington Woods, a Tree City USA recipient for over 30 years, celebrates Arbor Day by planting new trees on the city's right-of-way in city parks and common areas. Trees reduce erosion of topsoil, cut energy costs, moderate temperatures, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. Therefore, it be resolved that the city of Huntington Woods does proclaim April 22nd, 2018 as Earth Day, and April 28, 2017, and April 27, 2018 as Arbor Days in the city of Huntington Woods. Proclaimed this day at the regular city commission meeting, signed by your mayor. We have a motion to accept this proclamation.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. The second proclamation we have this evening, I was hoping to have Commissioner Jenks read, but he must be delayed somewhere. And I was gonna have him read it because he is a past chairman of SEMCOG. But this is a proclamation of the city of Huntington Woods honoring the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments, that are known as SEMCOG, their 50th anniversary. SEMCOG was formed in 1968 as a voluntary council of governments for the 7 counties in southeast Michigan, and began with 59 charter members. Today there's 170 members, including cities, villages, townships, intermediate school districts, community college, and all 7 counties. Obviously, SEMCOG does a lot of great things for our community. We'll forward this proclamation to SEMCOG. I'll mention that several Huntington Woods residents have played leadership roles in SEMCOG. And in 1975, our finance director, Sidney Alexander, was honored as a regional ambassador. In the year 2000, our mayor, Ron Gillum, was honored as a regional ambassador. And in 2007, City Commissioner Jeff Jenks was awarded a Taubman Fellowship to Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. And in 2015 and 16, he served as the chairperson for SEMCOG. So now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Huntington Woods, Mayor and City Commission hereby congratulate the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments on their 50th year or be part of their continued success in the next 50 years and beyond. Forward this on, the original signed version is over there by Commissioner Jennings. All right, we have a motion to accept the proclamation. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to our normal items of business. Item number 1, sewer infrastructure program.
The sewer cleaning project has been completed. Our engineers have reviewed the videotape and they have broken the project down into parts, areas that need to be repaired right away, and then some that can wait a little bit. The estimate came in around $13 million. So because this is I think the largest infrastructure project that the city's ever undertaken, we would like authority from the city commission to select a financial advisor to work with so that we can figure out the best way to structure the payment for this work, a combination of, it could be bonding, water rates, or a special assessment, and figure out what is the correct balance for our residents, as well as select an engineer that we feel comfortable and has a background in doing this kind of sewer related work. So we'd like to get authority to go out for bids and bring back potential agreements for financial advisor to help with this process, as well as engineering services to design the repair program.
Can we add a time limit on this for the engineering report and financial report to be presented back to the city commission?
Other than as soon as possible?
Yeah, other than
That
as soon
works.
as possible.
Yeah.
At least an expectation, and this is been a program, this process that's been going on for quite a while.
That's,
And,
yeah.
Well, Tim and I have baked into the budget some costs for trying to decipher who's gonna be the professional service folks who look at this. Obviously, the budget begins in July 1, right? So, we can start right away. A lot of the work has been done prior to this in terms of getting started. But actually going out for bid and determining what this resolution is all about is a whole nother matter. So it would seem to me that with July 1 not that far away, we could try to have this accomplished before, or early in the budget year. Let's say by August 1.
Yeah,
It's gonna
well,
take some time to be able to, there's a lot here, that this is not easy stuff. So maybe July 1, Amy, would be logical?
well, I want to make sure I understand the mayor. You're talking not a deadline to have an engineer, financial advisor on board, but have an engineer design a program and a financial advisor.
Well, there's a couple pieces
prepare-
of that. Let's get this clear. Let's make sure this is clear, and that is determining who, this is a big project.
Mhm.
Finding the right parties to do this is gonna be critical to how that looks. So, I don't wanna predetermine, I don't wanna do that too quickly. It seems to me that we know we're gonna do this. We've got professional service dollars in the 2018-19 budget. And so it would seem to me that we need to look for a July 1 determination to come to you for, let's say, to come to the commission for what is the results of an RFP. But remember, we're at the end of March, April 1, April, May, June. That's 3 months to do that well. And I think we can do it, but I still would think that determining who that is going to be, what professionals are going to help us, perhaps 2-3 months
I
from
can
now.
tell you what my biggest concern is. Noack and Fraus took a couple of years to analyze all these videotapes.
And I'm talking about 3 months here, so.
Another company could do all that and analyze these tapes. If they are so inclined to say, well, we have to analyze all the videotape, we don't wanna wait another 2 years is my concern.
And I'm talking 3 months.
Okay.
But you're not talking 3 months to make a recommendation, you're talking about 3 months to select the parties to work with.
It's gonna be up to this commission to select via what we come back with.
Right,
And
I think what the mayor's looking for is how fast before we can get a recommendation so that it can be before the city commission to make that decision. Is that where you're going?
Yes.
Or the
Okay.
person that's gonna make the recommendation about how to fund it? When you say that, make a recommendation?
Yes.
Well, what
think
we're
that's
looking
what
at,
you're
we're looking at, we have major problems in some of the system that need to be addressed immediately. Can we put off some of them for a few years? How can we spread out this 13 million?
Well, I think that's an engine, if it's all right to address it now, I think that's an engineering. I
Absolutely
mean,
it is.
whoever did this, the crew that did this for us, they can say, here's your 5-alarm fire here, here's your 1-alarm fire, here's no fire. They should be able to do that for us. Hell, they've been working on this for 2 years. I would think they should be able to tell us where our problems are without a lot of fancy footwork, wouldn't you think?
I understand.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I think that as we look at bringing a financial advisor on and sources of ways to pay for this, although, under federal law now, there's this cap of deductibility at 10,000. That could increase at some point, or maybe even be removed under future Congresses. I'd be hesitant to look at, putting a lot of emphasis on water because that isn't deductible. And, more a special assessment property tax route would allow for some residents and potentially in the future for some deductibility of this expense, that we would be asking residents to assume. So, as we look at this, I think that's one area we want to consider is, property tax versus water bill. There's some benefits of deductibility with property tax that we don't have with water bill. Like I said, in light of this $10,000 cap, and who knows what the future holds.
In behind this, and I'll just make one more comment, and we have a big agenda, in behind this is a lot of data already. On the other page there, I mean, there is substantial data back there, so we've already done some legwork, Tim and I. But with the transition happening here, I think we can try for a July 1. I think, Amy, you're correct. I think we can get a recommendation to the city commission, but I don't want to presume that we can have this ready to go quickly.
Mr. Mayor? But again, I just want to be sure what we're talking about. We're talking about selecting whoever it is going to tell us this is the best way to pay for it, right?
That's right.
Okay, so my guess would be that there can't be a lot of people out there that do that. We have an accounting firm that, why is
Okay, I understand our technical difficulties have been resolved and we can reconvene the meeting. Any other comments from the city commission? We have a motion on the floor to authorize the RFQ for financial advisor and engineering services for the sewer infrastructure program. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item number 2, off-street parking waiver for Dennis and Linda Kays.
Yes, couple of years ago, the city commission adopted an ordinance dealing specifically with off-street parking spaces. The ultimate goal was to remove the off-street parking spaces from the city, so written into the ordinance was when a road is being reconstructed, if there's an off-street parking space, it will be removed at that time at the city's expense to get away from the issue that we had where sometimes homeowners inherited or bought a home that had the off-street parking space and didn't feel that they should be required to take it out, so they didn't put it in. So there also is a provision in the ordinance that residents can petition the city commission and ask for a waiver and be allowed to have an off-street parking space if they have unique circumstances that would make it necessary for them to have that space. So Dennis Kays is on Salem, which is going to be reconstructed sometime this year. So his current off-street parking space will be removed, and he would like to request the waiver from the city commission to have another one installed as per the ordinance requirements.
You've seen my application. Hopefully you've looked at the pictures. Hopefully even you looked at the map I drew poorly. Hopefully you took some time to drive by and see the current spot, see the yard, see the whatever. Basically, it's really very simple. At least 9 months of the year, I have 3 cars. Sometimes I have 4 and 5 when my children or whatever are here, but that's not overly important. We're on Salem, which is a relatively narrow street, parking on only one side. Directly across the street from my house is a fire hydrant. So that basically, when I have 3 cars in the driveway and I want to use the 3rd car, which is a classic Jaguar E-Type, you may have seen it driving through the city. It's a red one. You may have noticed it from time to time, hopefully when it's running. Be that as it may, when we want to drive that, we have to then obviously take 2 cars and put them in the street, which, as I see it, and I'm just a resident, the more cars in the street that we have, the more dangerous the street becomes, the more complicated the driving is. I see no benefit to forcing people to put cars in the street so that they can then get out the car. So we have 3 cars. We don't have a garage. We've never had a garage. We never plan on ever having a garage. Maybe the next owner will decide to have a garage. We own the empty lot next to us. I understand it's one of maybe 1 or 2 still lots that are empty in the city. We've never built on that lot. We don't want to build on that lot because we use that lot for gardens. At the back of our house, the side of our house, the side of the Burke's house, they just happen to walk in. We maintain their gardens. And if we parked a car alongside our house, we have gorgeous hydrangea bushes in the spring and summer. If we parked a car alongside our house, it's a very narrow driveway. Not only can I get back and forth on the driveway, but then you can't see the gardens. So all these things combined, we believe that we should be entitled to have a parking space that looks like the parking space we now have, which, since I'm before you, I will be honest and say we can park 2 cars in it. 1 car on my main lot and 1 car on our lot that we own, the next door lot. So we're asking for permission to rebuild that parking space. And I think that I can't think of a reason why not to. I can't personally understand why the city wanted to remove all those spaces in the first place and put more cars in the street, which is the effect of what you're doing. But that was your decision some time ago. I argued against it then and I lost. I'm hoping I can keep my parking space. So I ask for your indulgence in allowing me to do that. Any questions? I feel.
No, anyone have a question? No, I don't think so. Any, thank you very much. Any public comment? Okay.
I'll say something. Linda Solomon, 8246 Huntington. I see these spots being given all over Huntington Woods. I don't see why he should be denied. I've heard in the meetings I've been before where people have come and asked for these, and you know, it seems very random, but other people have gotten them, and I think he should too.
Thank you.
I'm Jack Burke, 25885 Salem, neighbor of Dennis, and I concur with what Dennis is saying in that our street is a narrow street. Salem is very narrow, and I believe that the off-street parking space that he's requesting, as ours would also, eliminates or makes it eliminates the hazard that would occur by adding to the parking because of that hydrant that's out front. And if the parking is retained on that side of the street, it hampers. There's a 30-foot clearance required by public safety for that hydrant, and it hampers being able to park there. So really, there's nowhere to park on the street, and that's why the off-street parking serves a purpose, and I think it should be retained.
Thank you.
Thanks. You're welcome.
All right, any other public comment? Seeing none, public participation is closed. Move it to the city commission. Any,
Well, I just want to comment on the resident that, in public comment, Ms. Solomon. I can't think of any resident in the last several years that I participated in who was granted an off-street right-of-way parking spot. The policy has been to eliminate them completely. There were some spots given out, I know a few years ago, when Huntington was done along the zoo, an area you're intimately familiar with, and there were a couple houses there. I know that several years ago got put a space back in, but the consistent policy that we've been trying to follow for at least the last 9 years that I've been here is to eliminate the right-of-way parking spots. And one of the reasons for it is that it had become just sort of, when you say at random, you're right about that, people would just put them in. We had people that just put them in without a permit, without requesting, without anything, they just put it in. That's city property. That's not the resident's home. That belongs to the city of Huntington Woods. That's your property, my property, all of our property. And there used to be an argument that, you can never get adverse possession over public property. That, in other words, if you were, you kept something somewhere long enough, you say, well, it's mine by default. It's been there for long enough, and there's nothing you can do about it. And there were, in the early days of these debates, people who came in there, they brought legal counsel who argued that there was adverse possession right with respect to the right-of-way parking spot. And that was never the case. And then in the last few years, there were a couple cases in the Michigan Court of Appeals that had to do with that issue, and they held, yes, that a private individual can assert a right of adverse possession in public property, in municipal property. So that just means that the city just has to be very careful with what we do with our property. It's not a matter of convenience. It's a matter of the city not giving away its property. We did also, should be pointed out, that a couple of years ago, at the suggestion of Chief Pazdukowski, we agreed to change our ordinance to allow people to buy a permit so they can park on the street all night, and they're not subject to the 3 to 5 a.m. prohibition, which you buy an annual permit just like you pay for a permit for the parking spot. So, I mean, just by way of background, those are the things that we've looked at, and you know, I respectfully disagree with my friend Ms. Solomon that these things have been given out right and left. That not since my tenure here, which is now 9 years. And like I said, the policy has been to eliminate these, particularly, as I said, because of the issue related to adverse possession. So that's just by way of background.
I'll make one correction to your comments, Commissioner Olsman, that we have allowed for 2 such waivers in the last few years. Both were on corner lots.
Okay.
Both did show the reason for that, so it has been done, just to
But there was a
clarify
unique
there.
circumstance.
There were unique circumstances. Corner lots typically have very short driveways that do not allow for any cars to be parked in without it going over the sidewalk, which is another issue.
And it was a one-way street too that the house was
One
on.
of them was.
Yeah, right. These were extremely unique.
That was the one at
Yes,
Henley.
these were extremely unique circumstances. They're not being given out all over the city.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, there's one thing I forgot to add, and that is, if you drove by, for those of you that did and stopped and took a look, you'll note that we are the only house on Salem, and one of the few houses in Huntington Woods that has in fact put gardens in your right-of-way at each end to try and add to the beauty of the combined yards and whatever. So we have, at each end, we have, gardens, we have a tree, we have a dead tree that I'm still waiting for the city to replace. Hopefully I'm on their list, but, that's another story. I just hope that you allow us to keep this parking space so we don't have to continually move cars back and forth and put them in the street. Thank you.
So I did drive by and I noticed that the driveway is narrow along the house there, and that the driver's door would be up along the house, so it'd be difficult to open if you were parked up alongside the house, or at least wouldn't be an ideal situation. But I'm wondering, you probably could, if you were able to get 2 vehicles in the driveway, and you were able to apply through public safety and get a permit to put one in the street, does that solve your issue?
Do you really want a car in the street overnight, every night, all the time? Is that really what you want?
That's the
Okay.
city's.
Would it solve my
policy.
problem?
Right.
Yes, I would be able to park a car in your street and add to the congestion and the ugliness, quote, ugliness of the street. But having a parking space, I think, is by far the better alternative of those 2 choices. That's not what you want. I don't think.
It is the policy of the city to eliminate all off-street parking.
Except when there are circumstances to justify it.
Correct.
Your job to determine whether those circumstances exist.
Any other comments? Do we have a motion?
Motion. Well, I make a motion to deny it because there's no factual basis for it. Doesn't mean, there's nothing here that requires it.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any other comments or questions? So an affirmative vote is to deny the application. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3 is regarding our pension and retiree health care.
Yes, there was a law passed by the state of Michigan late in 2017 to address the unfundedness of pensions and OPEBs, which are health care for retirees. And there were criteria determined in the law to figure out or determine when cities were unfunded. And we are not unfunded for our OPEB, but we are just barely considered, preliminarily considered unfunded for our pension. So we can request a waiver from the state of Michigan if we can show them that we have taken steps to address our pension liability and that we will continue to work on, continue to implement the steps that we have, remember we just changed the pension plan for the public safety officers recently. So that plan is attached, and before we can send it to the state of Michigan, we need a resolution from the city commission that you support our request for a waiver to determine that we are not underfunded.
We have a motion to submit Form 5583 to the state of Michigan requesting this waiver.
So move.
Second?
Any public comment? Any comments or questions of the city commission?
And Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
And so this is public criteria, so going forward, we'll know what the measurement will be and how to stay ahead of it, knowing that they're going to be using a specific valuation, that we're reporting in our CAFR, as opposed to what was in our MERS evaluation with the investment smoothing.
That's correct.
Okay, great.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 4 is a matter discussing a traffic signal 11 Mile in Scotia.
Yes, I had a request from a city commissioner to take a look at whether or not there were enough criteria to warrant a traffic signal at 11 Mile in Scotia. So we referred this to Traffic Improvement Association because they have a traffic engineer on board. He took a look at the different statistics, the volume on both roads, crash data, and it is his opinion that that intersection does not qualify for a traffic signal. So you have the report from Traffic Improvement Association in front of you, and also Lieutenant Sterin is here if you have any questions specifically about the report or the results.
What do you think about that, Lieutenant?
Personally, I read Pat's study. I actually called him.
Can you come up and join us up here?
I actually called Pat because sometimes he'll send his studies and I have to read them several times to get through them. The numbers they were talking about was 500 vehicles per hour for 8 hours consecutively on one road, which would be 11 Mile. The other they were talking about is 150 vehicles per hour during the same 8-hour period on the other one. Scotia doesn't come close, and 11 Mile at this point does. Now, their study was done in 2016, and it looked backwards for 3 years regarding the crashes. The only crashes they dealt with were crashes that were at angles. So they ruled out anything that had to do with snow, with ice, with alcohol, drugs.
When you say
things of that
at angles, you mean somebody pulling out and
Yes.
somebody running into them?
That's what they based their review on. The pedestrian traffic, the only real traffic I see out here is east-west is people walking. The window I sit and look out of, I continually see bicycle traffic crossing across here, but the majority of it's on the weekend where you'll see these trains of 15, 20 people deep crossing. But as for people running for their lives across that street, I don't.
No, but just for the record, I was the one that requested that we look at this because there was a resident that posted an inquiry on Nextdoor about it, and it seemed to attract a number of other comments from other residents. So I thought, you know, when something like that surfaces, you know, it's not a big deal to go to somebody like you and say, what do you think? But I have a question for you about, for example, on Coolidge, between Catalpa and 11 Mile, there's a those sticks.
Those brand new crosswalks they have?
Yeah, and I presume that's related to the high school and students crossing there. But I have to tell you, I think that's, I mean, I'm going to call it peculiar. I've never seen anything like that before. Is this something new?
That was,
Well, I've seen those in downtown Royal Oak, where there's high pedestrian traffic and restaurants. Quite honestly, when those first went in, I just about drove right through it.
they were.
Well, for almost 30 years.
I appreciate that candor. I want you to know that.
They were put up by the DDA in Berkeley to facilitate people being able to shop in the commercial district safely.
Really? Well, I saw it as, you know, I looked at it as it must be for the high school, for kids crossing or something like that. But no, but I, you know, I'm not a traffic safety engineer, and I don't pretend to be a law enforcement officer. I don't even get to play one on TV, as they say. But I do appreciate, I think sometimes when residents ask questions like that, there's merit. Where public safety is involved, there's merit, and in my opinion. And I appreciate the effort that you put into it. And so, you know, just so folks understand that sometimes it seems like, well, there's, what's the harm? It's not really what's the harm, it's what's the requirement, because you are talking about traffic flow, you're talking about a major regional street and so forth. So it isn't just, well, that'd be nice, let's put in, you know, why don't we put a stop sign in here or something like that. It isn't always the visceral, that seems like a good idea, without, for example, when we've had that traffic safety engineer come in a couple years ago, and we had the discussion about stop signs, you know, more use of stop signs, and he pointed out, I forgot the gentleman's name, but
Same guy, Pat Cawley.
Pat Cawley?
yeah, and he pointed out the studies that have been done that show that the more stop signs actually increases speed of vehicles in between them, because they're trying to make up for the time they lost when they stopped for the stop sign. And I continue to maintain, and from what I see, and I know I'm sure from what you see, that the distracted driving epidemic is rampant.
Yeah.
And every, you know, it's like that accident involving the driverless car in, I believe it was in Tucson with Uber. They said that the camera, dash cam, showed the guys easy. You were talking about flooding.
Sure are chatty.
Showed the
Sure are
dash-
chatty.
So, don't get wild on me, buddy. The dash cam showed the driver looking down. Now, what could he possibly have been looking down at, except his phone or something like that? So, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm doing my imitation of Commissioner Jenks in his absence.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move we receive and file the TIA report.
I'll second.
Look who's cutting me off.
Item number 5, bid award for the replacement of the garage roof on the DPW.
Yes, due to the age of our buildings, several years ago, we had a company come out and do a complete assessment, and we are on schedule to do roof replacements. We did the recreation center last year. This year, money's been budgeted for repairs to the DPW roof. We received 3 bids, and we're recommending that you go with the low bidder, Lutz Roofing, for $65,000.
We have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any public comment? All those, or any comments or questions on the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Tim, I see Tony's making you use word perfect.
Yeah, he's using the word perfect, yeah. I'm just...
You don't feel like you're obliged to use that word. I know he isn't.
Keep that.
Item number 6, the long-range budget and planning committee. We have been in the process of collecting applications to help the city of Huntington Woods with the long-range budget and planning committee. We have proposed a group of 20 people made up of residents. We're pulling in the current members of our budget advisory board. to serve on that committee, and then we are going to interview other applicants that are interested in helping and serving on this committee. So we need to pick a date to interview residents, and I would also like the commission to consider any, because we did open this up to anyone, including people that were serving on existing boards and commissions. I would ask that we have a waiver of an interview for those members serving on the budget and advisory board, as well as any other board or commission currently serving, because we have interviewed those people recently and really cut down on the number of interviews that we need to do. So,
Need a formal motion for that?
no, I think that's just a policy, and just need to
I would
get some
support,
some
I would
idea.
support that. I think for this, we should be, this is an idea factory. We should be looking for anybody who has the background and skill to give us some serious suggestions here.
So we're looking for some consensus on dates that we would be available as a commission to.
Since Commissioner Jenks isn't here, why don't I send out a doodle poll?
Okay.
And then everybody, we can put together some dates and then everybody can weigh in on it and see if we can select two that work.
And we're looking in April.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, I'll take care of that tomorrow.
Thank you. Item number 7 is all of these actually, correct? Is there any of these you want to move on tonight, or all should you have 7, 8, 9, and 10 all be first reading?
First readings, yes.
Okay. So this will be item number 7, as well as 8, 9, and 10 are going to be first readings of ordinances. We will vote on them to accept them at the next regularly scheduled commission meeting. So start with the ordinance.
The first
Item number
ordinance,
7.
it was, the city commissioner asked me to take a look at the traffic fine amounts because they hadn't been updated in years. So we are recommending that the handicap violation be changed from a $35 fine to a $150 fine, and that the abandoned car violation and no parking between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. remain the same, and that all other parking violations, that would be things like parking in front of a fire hydrant, increase from $10 to $25.
Mayor? Yeah, I'll move the first, I don't know if we need a motion, but I'll move that the city of Huntington Woods
Actually, do we need a motion
for the first reading.
I don't know
Probably
why
not.
we're not passing.
Yeah, we're not doing
passing
anything,
it.
are we? We don't need
Yeah,
it.
we don't.
I don't think so.
Yeah, then I'll just, by way of comment, say that this came to our attention from the police union. They felt that the fees were inconsistent with other communities. They've worked with us very cooperatively on a number of issues in contract negotiations, and so it made sense, I think, to look at these fines, especially for things like handicap parking, et cetera. And so I had no issue bringing this forward and asking our city manager and chief to study it, and this is what they came up with.
Why is the 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. being treated differently than other parking violations?
I mean, why is it not due for an increase?
Yeah. Why isn't that just $25? I'm just asking for why the call out, why the difference.
You mean, why it's not being increased?
Yeah, why is it separated from all other parking violations? For example, blockading, sidewalk, things like that. I'm just asking.
It's currently called out separately in the ordinance, so that's why it's called out separately here.
And I know that they looked at other communities to see what they were charging, and I'm guessing maybe this is consistent with what other communities were charging, at least in my conversations with the chief, but I could be
Yeah,
wrong.
I didn't bring with me what the comparables were, but this is a reminder, if you will, not to park on the street. We don't want to be overly punitive about it, I think was the tack that Public Safety Department wanted to take. So we were comfortable with the $10 fine.
That's fine. It was merely an inquiry, not a,
Any Any public comment? Okay.
So let's do a motion to approve the first reading of the ordinance.
All
You
right,
do one? Okay.
so move.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
Item number 8.
The second ordinance that's on the agenda is an amendment to our zoning ordinance that has to do with medical marijuana provisions. Because this was in the zoning ordinance, it did go before the planning commission. They held a public hearing and did recommend that the city commission adopt this ordinance. And basically, it is the change as a result of a case in the Court of Appeals ruling on whether or not medical marijuana can be cultivated or stored in outside of the primary residence. Currently, we had said that medical marijuana activities shall not be conducted in accessory structures, and they had to be confined to the primary residence of the primary caregiver, and that has been struck down as being inconsistent with the Medical Marijuana Act. So
With the specific provisions of the medical marijuana.
Right,
Yes.
there were some further amendments to the Medical Marijuana Act that permitted this after the fact.
Is this a, for like small greenhouses and things like that, whatever?
I mean, if you look at it, arguably you could do like some real outside growing. So I don't know how it's all gonna play in the long run with some of the facilities, but they actually did amend the medical marijuana.
Right. Well, no, I mean,
Yeah.
the township of York versus Miller is, can the local ordinance preempt state law? And the answer is no.
Right.
State law will preempt the local ordinance.
Right.
So I was curious about it. Well, I guess it's safer than people having a closet with grow lights and everything like that, like Mr. Zed. I'm just kidding, I'm just kidding.
So this also is the
Only when
first
I get
reading.
calls at 7:30 a.m. in the morning on
Hey,
Sunday.
I just wanna make sure you're awake and alert,
Yeah.
Mr. Rosati.
All right, do we have a motion?
So move.
Second.
That's the same for
This is
first
for
reading.
the First reading.
Yeah.
Yep.
Weigh in on this,
Any
weigh in on this.
any
one.
public comment? All those, any other comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
There's a Comcast man here. Was there a problem with the internet?
Oh, thank you.
Somebody here?
Wow. Hey, how you doing? I didn't want to interrupt you guys.
Appreciate that, Mr. Burke.
For sure, Mr. Olson.
You're right on it.
Item agenda item number 9, another first reading
This is,
ordinance change.
yep, this is another amendment to the ordinance. With the passage of the rewrite of the zoning ordinance, I had a resident inquire about a specific definition within the ordinance and going back and forth on what that meant. I did a scan in the ordinance, and although it's listed as a definition, it is the definition of substantial improvement. It's actually, that term is never used in the zoning ordinance. So rather than getting into a discussion about what a substantial improvement means, I'm recommending, and the planning commission is recommending that they just withdraw that definition from the zoning ordinance because it's not necessary. So this again went before the planning commission. They held a public hearing and they recommended that the city commission adopt this ordinance to remove the definition of substantial improvement from the zoning ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Any public comment? Any comments or questions from the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And item number 10, a first reading regarding historic district regulation.
Yes, there is language in the zoning ordinance that deals with when there is a proposed historic district, which there isn't one, but in the, if there was one in the future, when development within that proposed historic district is looked at by the planning commission, or when it moves to the purview of the historic district commission while it's being considered as a proposed historic district. And it wasn't clear when that purview shift changes, and I was questioned about that, so what we decided to do was just reference Public Act 169, which is the Historic District Act, which outlines that process and that the triggers for moving a development review from the Planning Commission to the Historic District Commission. So no real substantive change, just some additional clarification into the zoning ordinance on that specific provision, because it was in the zoning ordinance, it did go to the planning commission, they held a public hearing, and they did recommend that this amendment be adopted by the city commission.
Yeah, this language in C mirrors the statute.
Okay, we have a motion.
So move.
Second?
Any public comment? Any other comments or questions of the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Item number 11, updated personnel manual.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, we did a very robust update to the personnel manual. And so it's been a couple of years, went through the personnel manual and would like to make some updates to that. Most of them are clarifications of situations that we are just putting in writing into the planning commission, into the personnel manual. We are adding a new fraud policy at the recommendation of the city attorney. That's something that had not been in the personnel manual before. So I'm asking you to approve these changes to the personnel manual, and then we can get it distributed to the, I want to say residents, employees.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to approve the March 2018 update to the city employee manual.
Second.
Any public comment? Any comments at the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Item number 12.
Every year we purchase specific briquettes to put into catch basins to eliminate the growth of mosquito larvae because of the West Nile virus, and the county has a program where they can assist with the purchase of these of this material. So the resolution you have before you is to request that Oakland County reimburse us for $820 toward the purchase of these briquettes to help combat West Nile virus.
I'll move.
Second.
Any public comment? Comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item number 13 is our annual 4th of July fireworks agreement.
I just realized it says the 201 firework agreement. I'm assuming that's 2018.
Hey, I was working on auction stuff that day, so.
This is the standard
Right.
agreement that we have
We're
with
going
the
back in time.
fireworks contractor that we have worked with in the past, and establishes the price for the fireworks display for 4th of July festivities.
Do we have a motion?
So move.
Second?
Any public comment?
Yes, I got one. This is a continuation of the contract, so that's why it was not sent out for bid.
Mr. Mayor, while we're on this topic, I would just indicate for the record that I spoke with, a year ago, I believe there was some difficulty shortly before the 4th of July getting a hold of someone from Fargo to let us out there, and I recall there being some little bit of angst about it. At the time, Butch Hollowell, the Corporation Counsel, I believe, put in touch with somebody, or finally, if whatever happened, it was another game of let's play chicken with a last minute deal. And so I spoke to Mr. Hollowell at that time, and I asked that there be something placed by the city of Detroit into the agreement that they have with their contractor for Rackham that just says on the 4th of July, we authorize Huntington Woods to hold fireworks in the evening, the times to go out, set it up, and get off. And now that Mr. Hollowell has gone on to the Powell Law Firm, I ran into Lawrence Garcia on Saturday, who used to live in Huntington Woods. He is now Corporation Counsel for the city, and I brought it up with him. So I did a letter today to him that I showed to our city manager for approval and appropriate diplomacy, and asked that we solve this clearly by the city of Detroit telling the contractor that that's part of the deal, and that we be allowed to do that as we have for the past, however many, is this 40+ years now of fireworks or longer? I know it's 40-something for the parade, but
How old am I?
I don't,
Old.
old.
64.
Ancient, some would argue.
More than 40 years.
Yeah, more than 40, all right. So anyway, I just add that little bit of cleanup work there.
Okay, any public comment? Did I ask that? Commission,
Did you vote?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 14 is a matter of approving the collection of the 2018 summer property taxes for the Berkeley School District and authorizing the annual agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Public comment? Any other questions or comment from the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 15 is a bid award for the application of a roadway sealant.
Yes, this is a process that we're putting on our newer roads to extend the life of the road. And we're broke it down into 2 phases, so this would be the second phase of the project to do 4 roads.
Do we have a motion to approve the project for a total not to exceed $10,873.13?
So moved.
Second?
Any public comment? Any questions of the commission? How long have we been doing this?
Last year was the
Annual
first year,
project?
wasn't it?
No, we had, about 6-7 years ago, well, really since we've done the new road projects, which was the couple series of bonds, we've done it for 10 years.
Has it been long enough to see if it's having any impact on the roads from
Oh.
10 years back when we first did it?
The short answer is we've talked to the engineers and they believe that we get maybe a year or 2 more leeway out of the roadway, and at 89 cents per square yard, it's worth that cost.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 16 is reports and minutes. Do I have a motion to receive and file the 6 reports we have presented?
I gave you a revenue page there for what is the budget, and it was not in your packet when we copied it. It must have been excluded, or I excluded it and Joy didn't copy it because you didn't have it.
What was at our table this evening? Anybody?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Reports or minutes are received and filed. Warrant number 334, we have a motion to accept subject to full audit. So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Or they're saving them all for next month? Oh, okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 18, we need a motion to authorize recessing into closed session immediately following the regular city commission meeting to consider the purchase of real property where an option had not yet been obtained. And we will not be reconvening, correct?
I doubt it, Amy. You didn't plan to reconvene? Yeah, no.
This will require a roll call vote, so do we have a motion?
I'll move it, Mr. Mayor.
Second?
Mayor Pro Tem?
Oh, yes.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Aye. The record show that the motion will carry unanimously. We have moved on to our city manager's report.
We have a couple of items. One is, as I informed you last week, we had a water break here in the basement of City Hall, and Joy went downstairs and found 18 inches of water in the basement of City Hall. So we have been working on getting the water line repaired, which still isn't repaired, which is why we don't have any restroom facilities and haven't had any since Wednesday. And I'm just really proud of the City Hall staff, who came in Thursday and worked really hard to get as much out of the basement as we could, lay things out. We had plans laid out here on the floor, the commission chamber, to try to get things dried out. Contacted a restoration company, and they are working on trying to save as many of the documents as we can. I mean, there's a lot of file cabinets downstairs, and the first file cabinet on every single one of them was completely soaked. So hopefully the water will be turned on by tomorrow, and turned the claim into the insurance company, and the water line will be bypassed. And as you had suggested, that there are alarms you can put in your basement.
Yeah.
So if there's a water issue, we'll know about it. But again, City Hall staff did a remarkable job trying to save as many documents as we could. At Recreation, they are accepting applications for summer park maintenance staff. Those jobs run May 14th through August 17th. Applications are available at the Gillum Recreation Center. And you could tell spring is coming because the skate park is due to open on April 2nd. But we are asking residents to stay off of Scotia Park grass until it begins to grow and it takes hold, so the snow fencing will remain up for a couple of weeks at the Scotia Park. The library asked me to mention that they are having a Friends book sale Saturday, April 7th, so a week from this Saturday from 10 to 4. And also there's a program that they would like to promote called The Witch of Del Rey on Wednesday, March 28th. They're going to have author Karen Dybus talk about a book that she's written that it's a murder mystery, if you will, set in Depression era Detroit. So that'll be Wednesday, March 28th at 7 p.m. if you're looking for some interesting history about Detroit. And also, we're closed Friday for Good Friday. Recreation Center is open its regular hours on Saturday, but will be closed on Sunday for Easter.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the city manager? I have one correction to our closed session. City attorney just told me that we will be reconvening following the close of that session.
Tony?
Commissioners' remarks. Commissioner Roselle.
I would just like to congratulate the Men's Club on another successful auction, and I enjoyed the evening. I thought it was a great event as usual. That's my only comment, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Roseman.
Bravo to the Men's Club, and happy holidays to all of our residents, Good Friday and Easter celebrations, and dinners and so forth, and lots of Seders, I'm sure, coming up this weekend in Huntington Woods, and everyone should enjoy those. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Iverson.
Just wish everyone a happy and safe traveling spring break and happy Easter, and see everybody back here in April.
Thank you. A quick thank you to the entire community for their support of the Men's Club auction. The gifts that were donated, the ads that were taken out, over 750 people that bought tickets and helped the club gross over $151,000. So without the support of the community, that could not be possible. Thank you very much. With that, we'll adjourn the regular city commission meeting and reconvene in a couple of minutes.
You should stay.
Anyway, Joe, everything was up here.
We did a roll call. Yeah, we did a roll call.
I hate to have to replace
Yeah.
brand new.
waiting up to attend the next commission meeting in March.
Yeah.
Or February, and I found
Yeah,
out.
right.
But he has to.
Yeah, but it'll run fast every time these things come up. Do you have any authority?
Well, but anyway.
I know, and then people think you're.